The garage still smelled like burnt oil when her text came in. Traveling for a few days, back Monday. I'll explain later. Don't worry. 8 years married, and I get a weather report. I didn't call or chase. I wiped my hands on a rag, walked to the kitchen, and typed back, "No problem, honey. Explain it to my attorney." Screen lit up. Unknown. Emily. Unknown. 10 calls in 2 minutes. I let them buzz through, set the phone face down beside the coffee I hadn't touched. Then I opened the utility drawer, pulled out the deadbolt. Coffee, lock, envelope, systems, not speeches. I pictured her arriving, expecting flowers or a fight. But the door won't slam. It'll click. Clean. Final. Because when trust breaks, I don't argue. I label boxes, change locks, and by the time you knock, I'm already living on the other side. If you've ever chosen clarity over chaos, hit subscribe. The rest of the story starts now. The garage smelled like brake fluid and old promises. I rinsed my hands in the shop sink, the water running gray, and carried that smell into the kitchen where the coffee had gone cold in a chipped mug we bought our first year. Emily looked past me, at the lamp, the window, any place but my eyes. Married folks know that look. It's the one that asks for less conversation and more pretending. I kept my voice level, the way you do when a bolt is about to strip. "Long day?" I said. "Busy," she answered, soft and even, like reading off a teleprompter. I set my lunch pail down, listened to the fridge hum, the dog sigh, the clock tick. You can learn a lot from the noises a house makes when two people stop talking. I took one sip, bitter and thin, then noticed the way her shoulders angled, not toward me, but away. That's when I realized the room was warm, but the welcome wasn't. She set her phone face down so fast it skittered on the counter, a little plastic skid that said more than words. I could have asked who, I could have asked why. Instead, I reached for a towel and worked a dark crescent of grease off my knuckle. In a shop, you fix what you can reach. At home, you count to 10 and read the gauges. "You hungry?" I asked. "I ate," she said, eyes pinned to the folded laundry like that had always been the plan. 8 years, and I knew the choreography. The half smile, the tidy excuse, the clever exit. I let the moment pass, but I didn't let it vanish. I filed it. Time, tone, movement, like logging a noise under the hood you'll hear again on the test drive. She headed down the hall, screen pressed to her thigh. I lifted my cup, didn't drink, and told myself the truth. Pretending is a habit, and tonight I was done practicing. People say don't sweat the small stuff, but marriage is mostly small stuff stacked to the ceiling. In the shop, a loose washer today is a ruined bearing next month. At home, it's the tiny omissions, no hello, no where are you, no when will you, that rust out trust. My dad used to say, "Son, little leaks sink big boats," and I carried that voice like a wrench in my back pocket. 8 years in, we had our dents and dings, our good Sundays and bad Tuesdays, but the pattern was new. The smile that didn't land, the late nights with no details, the schedule I was invited to fund but not to see. I wanted to believe it was just a season, like a long winter that finally breaks. I wanted that so much I almost called it patience. But patience is waiting with a purpose. This felt like waiting without a steering wheel. I looked at the door, then the phone, and felt the floor tilt. She said she was seeing friends, and the house swallowed the sentence whole. The porch light made a soft circle on the steps. Inside, the TV talked to no one while I ate standing up, a fork and a paper plate, the kind of quiet meal men recognize after a lifetime of doing what needs doing. I tried a ball game, turned it off. I tried music, turned it down. The clock on the stove wrote numbers I didn't like. Married folks learn the difference between solitude and neglect. One settles you, the other unravels you. I walked the rooms we furnished together, touched the back of a chair, straightened a crooked photo, and listened for the car that didn't come. Part of me wanted to text, to call, to join the guessing game. The older part, the one with scar tissue and a mortgage, said no. I turned off the living room lamp, set the phone face up and silent, and let the porch light keep watch. The next morning I made a different choice. Observe, don't argue. In the garage, systems save engines. At home, they save your sanity. I wrote down what mattered: time out, time back, promises made, promises kept. Not a detective, just a man who's tired of being told the speedometer is lying. I stopped filling in her blanks with best-case stories. If there was an ETA, I'd note it. If there wasn't, I'd note that too. I paid attention to the choreography of everyday things, the way her laughter spiked when a name buzzed, the new habit of checking the lock screen at angles, the careful "don't worry" that never came with a where or when. That list wasn't about catching anyone. It was about catching myself before I slipped back into wishful thinking. By lunch, I had a page of clean lines and plain words. That evening, when the house went quiet again, I knew this much: feelings can argue, facts just stand there. Bacon curled in the cast iron, 2 mugs breathing steam on the counter. Emily walked in wearing a hoodie that wasn't mine, the kind you buy together with someone else's plans. She scrolled while I flipped strips, the kitchen filling with a Sunday smell that usually means easy conversation. "Eggs?" I asked. "Maybe later," she said, thumbs never pausing. Married folks know this scene: 2 people at one table, living in different rooms. I set her plate down anyway. Habit is hard to break when you were raised to feed people before you ask questions. She picked at a corner of bacon like it had done something to her. "Brunch with the girls," she added, already moving. In the shop, I listened for the faint rattle that predicts a breakdown. At home, the rattle was silence and the clue was cotton, an unfamiliar hoodie. I didn't accuse. I made a note. Breakfast ended with dishes in the sink and a simple truth in my pocket: something here needs a line. I drew that line where grown-ups draw lines, on time and on respect. "Here's a house rule," I said, voice low and steady. "If you're out past 10, text me your ETA. If you can't, I'm going to bed and locking up." No shouting, no courtroom speech, just the rule taped to the fridge in plain words. She laughed through her nose, the kind of laugh that calls you dramatic for loving your sleep. "You're locking me out now?" "I'm locking the house," I answered, "because I get up at 5. Men my age know that math. Early alarms, real responsibilities, no interest in listening for keys at 2 a.m. She rolled her eyes like I'd canceled summer. I turned off the burner and watched the grease settle. Boundaries aren't romance, they're maintenance, like changing oil before the engine knocks. Her phone buzzed. She checked it. I didn't. The rule stayed on the door, and so did I. "You're controlling," she said, as if the word could move furniture. "I'm not controlling," I replied. "I'm being clear." At work, deliveries have windows, estimates have ranges, and grown men call when they're late. It isn't about catching someone. It's about not leaving the other person stranded with a light on and a mind racing. My dad used to tell me, confusion is expensive. He meant parts and payroll. Turns out, it also means marriage. I poured coffee, black, and let the heat settle into my fingers. "Tell me when you'll be back," I said, "so I can plan my sleep and my life." She stared at the calendar like the boxes owed her freedom. "You don't trust me," she tried. "I trust what people show me," I said. "Show me well." The room felt smaller for a second, then wider. That's what clarity does. It shrinks excuses and opens the door to better choices, both of ours. She tried again, softer this time. "You're locking me out emotionally." I shook my head. "No, I'm locking the house at 10. That's it." There's a difference older men understand. I can care about you and still care about my sleep, my morning shift, my sanity. I'm not a nightclub security guard. I'm a man who runs on daylight. "So romantic," she said, chewing sarcasm like gum. "Romance starts with respect," I answered. "We can work on flowers after we stop stepping on the same boundary." She turned the volume up on her sigh, walked down the hall, and let the bathroom door click shut. I wiped the counter, rinsed the pan, and placed the rule magnet straight. In the garage, a clean tool bench doesn't mean you hate engines. It means you plan to fix more than once. Same here. The boundary wasn't a wall. It was a hinge, one that finally swung the right direction. When the front door closed behind her that night, I listened for what stayed. No slam, no apology. Just the porch light throwing a pale circle on quiet steps and a dog shifting position like even he got the memo. I stood there with my keys in one hand and a pad of paper in the other. Small stuff had become important stuff. So I did what men who work with torque wrenches do. I logged it. Time she left. Time she returned. Words said. Words skipped. Not a detective. A witness with handwriting. The house felt like a garage after you clear out the junk. Echoey, honest, a little cold. I flipped the deadbolt and heard that clean click older ears appreciate. That sound wasn't punishment. It was punctuation. The end of the sentence where I waited and wondered. The start of the sentence where I act. Somewhere out there, her night would keep going. In here, mine just found its footing. She said, "Brunch with the girls," like it was a weather update, grabbed her keys, and floated out the door. The house held the echo a second longer than usual. I rinsed the skillet, wiped the counter, and tried to keep the day ordinary. Mowed the strip by the fence, tightened a loose hinge on the pantry, stacked the mail into bills and not bills. Married people my age know this rhythm. You keep the wheels turning because the wheels don't care how you feel. Afternoon light moved across the floor like a slow clock. I thought about texting, then didn't. I brewed fresh coffee I didn't need and let the porch light come on by itself. That bulb has seen enough comings and goings to know the truth. If somebody wants you in their plans, you don't have to chase the details. The sun slid down, the house exhaled, and I decided to let the night speak for itself. I'd answer in the morning by how I lived. Later, scrolling while the ball game droned, I saw it. A rooftop bar photo with that downtown view everyone posts when the weather is perfect. Rachel had liked it. Same friend circle, same nights out. 4 glasses, 2 women I knew, 1 guy with an expensive haircut, and a space where a 5th person could have stood. Emily wasn't in the frame, or she'd learned not to be. People don't always hide their lives. They just step to the side of the camera. Older folks remember film, how you paused before you pressed the shutter. Now it's all burst shots and vanishing stories. But the old rules still apply. Posture tells on people. The angle of a shoulder, the way a hand lands on a glass, the laughter that looks away from the lens. I set the phone down and felt the room lean a degree. Tonight didn't need an argument. It needed a man who could read a picture. So I did what has saved me money and pride more than once. I chose quiet action over loud wondering. In the shop, I log miles and parts. At home, I started logging time and truth. Out at 6:12. Brunch with the girls. No return estimate. Not detective work. Maintenance. Like checking the oil before a road trip. I folded a towel, wrote the date, and reminded myself that adults who mean well put times on calendars, not riddles in your head. I didn't draft a speech. I didn't call 3 friends for advice. I changed the light bulb over the sink, took the trash out early, and let tomorrow find me rested. If you've ever raised kids or paid a mortgage, you know, hope is a beautiful thing, but it makes a lousy plan. By 10, the house was dark except for the porch light's small halo. My rule was simple, and it started with me. No more pacing, no more guessing. Clarity starts at home. Around 3, the dog thumped his tail once and went still, the sound a man learns to hear after decades of mornings. The lock turned, cautious. Shoes on the mat, careful. That's how you come in when the clock isn't on your side. I didn't speak. I didn't even roll over. I watched the red digits move to 301, then 302, and let the silence keep the tally. In another life, I would have started the dance. Where were you? Who was there? Why so late? In this life, I'd already spent those questions and gotten store credit. I waited for the sink to run, for a drawer to slide, for a hinge to complain. None of it did. The house had learned how to be quiet, and so had I. Morning would be clean, morning would be coffee and notes and an adult decision. If she wanted to talk, she'd find me clear-eyed. If not, she'd find a man who still keeps his schedule. On the island, in the glow of a leftover candle, a note leaned against a salt shaker. Sorry, fun ran long, brunch rain check. Neat script, practiced. The kind you use for cards and explanations you hope will pass. I poured coffee and read it twice, the way you read a warranty to see what's really covered. Older eyes catch what younger ones miss. The spacing, the careful curve, the way sorry looks like it's been written before. I slid the note under the magnet, not to save it, just to mark the day I stopped filling in blanks for other people. We all get one life, and I refuse to spend mine proofreading alibis. I washed the cup, straightened the stack of mail, and put a fresh page on the pad. Date, time, words said, words skipped. Then I wrote a line at the bottom, for me. Respect isn't a feeling. It's a system. And starting today, mine would not be negotiable. I sat with my coffee and did the math older men do when the noise dies down. Time, money, and trust. Time first. The hours that drifted with no details. The nights that stretched past midnight. The mornings that arrived heavy. Money next. The shared account that treated weekends like mysteries I was asked to fund. And then trust. The ledger you don't keep on paper. The one you feel in your chest. I've balanced books at the shop and balanced seasons at home. Both go bad the same way. Small leaks, ignored too long. I opened a notebook, wrote 3 columns, and told myself the truth in plain words. Clarity isn't mean, it's maintenance. I circled what I could control, sleep, locks, bills, boundaries, and underlined what I couldn't, other people's stories. The coffee went lukewarm. The list stayed warm. My dad used to say, "Write it down, son. Feelings forget." I put the pen down, steadied my breath, and knew the next step wouldn't be a speech. It would be a rule. At lunch, I drove to the bank, the way you drive to the parts store when the rattle has a name. Here's how this goes, I told myself. Shared account becomes bills only, mortgage, utilities, insurance, everything else from our separate cards, not punishment, procedure. I set up auto drafts, printed confirmations, and slid the shared debit into an envelope marked utilities only. Back home, I took a photo for my records, systems, not speeches, and set the envelope on the counter where no one could miss it. I didn't rehearse a debate. I didn't need a victory. I needed peace. When Emily called, I wiped my hands and answered. "Saw the bank thing," she said, sweet around the edges. That was fast. "Clarity is faster than drama," I said. The line went quiet, airy like a tire losing air slow. "We can talk tonight?" she offered. "We can live by what's written," I answered. The envelope waited between us like a mirror. That night she stood by the counter, one finger on the envelope, the other hand on her hip. "You don't trust me," she said, aiming the words where they'd always worked. I shook my head. "I trust what people show me." Married folks my age know the difference. Trust isn't blind, it's patient with proof. I pointed to the calendar. "Give me times. Give me places. Let me plan a life that doesn't listen for keys at 2 a.m. She exhaled like I'd suggested a curfew in high school. "You're controlling." "No," I said. "I'm being clear. At the shop, deliveries have windows. Good crews call when those windows slip. It isn't romance. It's respect." She glanced at the envelope again, then at me, like she was deciding which story to keep. The room felt tight for a moment. Then it didn't. That's the thing about boundaries. They're small, but they move walls. "Fine," she said. "I'll text." "Show me," I answered. She softened, made my favorite sandwich, laughed at a video, set her phone in the junk drawer with a flourish like surrender. "See? Present," she smiled, a practiced word wearing Sunday clothes. I nodded because older men learn to reward effort without renting hope. "We'll see," I said. She touched my arm, a touch that used to land. "I'll be better about scheduling." "Start tonight," I offered. "Tell me what time to expect you and make it true." We watched a sitcom with the volume low, the kind where the marriage problems wrap in 22 minutes and a final joke. Real life doesn't follow that script. Around bedtime, the house went gentle. I heard the dog settle, the ice maker drop a cube, the porch light click. Then from across the house, faint and sharp, her phone chimed from the drawer. Once, twice, 3 times. She stayed very still. The drawer stayed shut, and a promise I hadn't asked for started to bend. Morning arrived with kindness, her smile, fresh coffee, a sticky note that read, "Proud of you." The handwriting was neat, the kind you use on birthday cards and apologies. We ate in a careful silence that tried to pass as peace. She asked about the shop, I asked about her sister. Nothing heavy, nothing useful. Older folks know that kind of conversation. It floats, but it doesn't carry you anywhere. I rinsed my cup and listened to the kettle fade. Somewhere in the house, that phone was still alive, waiting for a hand that didn't belong to me. About tonight, I said, drying my hands. Text your ETA. I will, she promised, bright as a showroom. Promises are easy before the engine warms. I straightened the envelope on the counter and slid the magnet across the house rule. Coffee, lock, envelope. Systems, not speeches. She kissed my cheek and left a hint of perfume in the doorway. The scent lingered. The truth didn't. The next day played nice, the way a used car shines under lot lights. Breakfast was easy, the kind of eggs you make on autopilot. Emily laughed at a silly video and leaned her feet against my shin like old times, and for a moment the house remembered how to feel simple. I wanted to buy that moment wholesale. Older folks know the pull. You spot one good sign and try to hang your whole future on it. I stacked dishes, wiped the counter, and let the afternoon be ordinary on purpose. Fixed a hinge, replaced a porch bulb, folded t-shirts into clean lines. She showed me her calendar with a flourish, pointed at vague blocks labeled friends, and said all the right words. I nodded, careful with hope. The sun went down in a slow stripe across the hallway, and the dog curled at the door like a seal on a rock. I told myself, maybe we're turning a corner. Then night reminded me corners can hide things. Around 1 o'clock a.m., the house was so quiet I could hear the ice maker breathe. From the junk drawer across the kitchen, her phone chimed. Once, twice, 3 times. Clean little notes, too eager, too close together. If you've ever raised teenagers or cared for aging parents, you know how night sounds steal your sleep. You learn to sort the harmless from the important. This one wasn't harmless. She didn't move, just kept her back to me, the stillness of someone practicing innocence. I stared at the ceiling fan, counting slow, and felt the old habit tug. Ask now, push now, start a fight no one wins. I rolled to the edge of the bed instead, let my feet find the rug, and went to the kitchen for water. The drawer sat quiet, pretending. I set the glass beside it and listened for the second act. The house held its breath with me. Whatever this was, it had a schedule. And it wasn't mine. In the morning, over buttered toast and weather talk, I asked it plain. Who needs you at 1 in the morning? She didn't blink. Spam, she said, like a cashier reading a price. I nodded the way older men nod when the story fits too neatly. 3 of them? I asked, rinsing my cup. Happens, she shrugged, then reached for a jacket I didn't recognize. Here's the thing about spam. It doesn't text you by name, and it doesn't make people hold their breath in the dark. I dried my hands and let the conversation end where it wanted. She kissed my cheek, light and careful, and left a cloud of perfume that didn't belong to Saturday morning. The dog watched the door longer than usual. I set the cup in the rack, grabbed the pad from the counter and wrote one line, 1 o'clock a.m., 3 pings, spam. Feelings argue, facts just stand there. The page didn't flinch, neither did I. She came home that evening with grocery bags and a bigger smile, the kind that tries to fix what it can't name. Dinner's on me, she said, laying out steak and a jar of marinade. We ate at the table, not the couch, and kept the subject safe. My shop, her sister, a neighbor's new fence. I wanted to believe in this version. I did. But once you've heard the chime at 1 o'clock a.m., your ears don't go back to factory settings. That sound lives in your head like a smoke alarm that never quite quits. So I let the moment be nice and kept my notes. After dishes, she slid her phone into the junk drawer and closed it with a little stage bow. Present, she grinned. Good, I said, and meant it as far as it would go. We watched a show, lights low. When the credits rolled, I felt it again. That gentle tilt you feel on a boat when the wake catches up. The garage gave me the only truth I needed. Engines don't lie. They sputter or they sing, and your tools don't care which. I opened the bay door, let cold air move the smell of old oil, and set to work on a neighbor's Dodge. Plugs, belts, a stubborn bolt that needed heat and patience. There's a piece older hands recognize. When the fix is honest, the rattle has a source, and what you tighten stays tight. Somewhere in the house, a phone would chime for an audience it thought was guaranteed. Out here, the only ringing was a socket hitting home. I wiped my hands, checked my list, sleep right, lock up, money straight, boundaries clear, and felt my spine unbend. Men my age don't need a perfect day. We need an honest one. The engine caught, smooth and sure. I listened to it idle, steady as breath, and heard my next step in that rhythm. Systems, not speeches. Time to tune my life the same way. My phone buzzed while I was wiping down the bench. Rachel. We're not close, so her name on my screen already meant something. I answered with a shop towel still in my hand. Jack, she said, and her voice had that edge people get when they've made up their mind to jump. I can't hold it anymore. I leaned against the toolbox and let her talk. Older folks know this sound, the tremble of someone telling the truth even if it costs them. I've tried to stay out of it, she said, but watching you stand there in the dark, I can't. The room got very simple. Steel, oil, and a choice. Say it plain, I told her, steady. She took a breath like a diver. Emily isn't with the girls every time. Silence has weight when it fits. I didn't fill it. I'm sorry, she added, but you deserve clear. A socket clicked into its rail behind me. If you have something real, I said, I'll look. I have photos, Rachel said, fast, before courage could change its mind. From last weekend. I didn't want to take them. I did anyway. I heard traffic through her car window, a turn signal counting down. He's older, sharp haircut, too tight shirt for his age, she said, facts like cold water. I pictured Emily's not quite late returns, the drawer that chimed at 1 a.m., the careful notes on my pad. Older men collect patterns the way mechanics collect sounds. You know, the misfire before the dash lights up. You don't have to believe me, she rushed. You shouldn't, but you should see. I kept my voice even. Don't send me your opinion, I said. Send me what a camera saw. She exhaled into the phone. Check your messages, she whispered. Then the line clicked dead, and I stood there between a press and a parts shelf, feeling the air change temperature. I didn't pray for a different truth. I braced for the one that was coming. The message landed with the soft thud of a verdict. 2 images. I didn't open them right away. I set the phone down on the bench like a hot part and breathed the way you breathe before you lift something heavy, the kind of breath older backs understand. No speeches, I told myself. Just facts. Outside, a truck rolled past the bay door and sunlight moved an inch on the concrete. Then I picked up the phone and tapped. Rooftop lighting. That warm city glow everybody loves when the weather behaves. 4 glasses in frame, 2 women I recognized, 1 man I didn't, and body language I wish I didn't recognize at all. His hand rested where rings don't go. Her face tilted the way faces tilt when nobody thinks the world is looking. The second photo waited like a second opinion. I opened it. There it was again. Closer, clearer, kinder to no one. Truth doesn't knock. It lets itself in. I studied the pictures the way I study an engine bay. Angles, lines, what's connected to what. Older eyes help. You stop arguing with what's in front of you. The man's hand on her hip wasn't a hello. The lean of her shoulder wasn't a misread. The polite space you keep with friends was gone, replaced by a posture that always has a history. In the background, the city threw diamonds on the glass, pretty and unhelpful. My chest didn't explode. My hands didn't shake. It felt like hearing a rattle you already suspected and finally finding the loose bolt. I saved the images to a locked folder, not to gloat, so I wouldn't have to touch them again. Then I texted Rachel. Received, thank you. 3 words, no fireworks. She replied, I'm sorry, you didn't deserve this. I deserved clarity, I wrote back. You gave it. The shop fell quiet enough to hear my own breath even out. The truth had arrived. Now came the math. I set my phone down, washed the grease from my fingers, and closed the shop 15 minutes early. Not to chase, to choose. There's a place you go when feelings aren't enough, where paper speaks and doors get new lives. I drove there calm, like I do when a problem finally has a name. Inside, I signed what a calm man signs and asked the questions you ask when you plan to act instead of argue. On the way home, I stopped for moving boxes and a fresh deadbolt, the kind you install with a diagram and 2 steady hands. At the house, I opened the bedroom closet and started with her side, 1 hanger at a time. Fold careful, tape clean, label plain. Bedroom, bathroom, desk. I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear. Before dark, I set the boxes by the door, slid an envelope on top, and stood there long enough to hear the decision click into place, like a lock that finally fits. I walked into the attorney's office the way I walk into a parts counter. No threats, just questions. The receptionist offered water. I asked for a checklist. What happens first? What do I need on paper? What protects the house? Older adults know this drill. Wills, titles, the DMV, nothing glamorous, everything necessary. The attorney listened more than he spoke, then laid out the path in simple steps. Filings, notices, what to document, what not to argue about over text. Facts travel better on paper than feelings do over the phone. I signed to authorize information pulls, set a folder on my knee, and felt my pulse slow the way it does when a stubborn bolt finally takes torque. No victory lap, no speech for the camera, just a man with a plan. When I left, the sun hit the hood of my truck like a clean shop light. I didn't drive angry, I drove steady. The law would handle the noise, I'd handle the locks. After the office, I did the practical loop older folks trust. Hardware store, moving aisle. I chose a deadbolt with a solid throw, a pack of heavy boxes, and a fat black marker that wouldn't fade. In the next aisle, tape with fibers you can't tear by hand, the kind you use when you mean it. The kid at checkout said, "Moving day?" I said, "Sorting day," and he nodded like he understood more than his shirt size. Back home, I set everything on the table, lock, tape, marker, like tools before a job. I laid out a clean towel, opened the hardware, read the diagram, checked the screws. There's comfort in a diagram. Holes have places, edges have names, and if you follow the arrows, things line up. My phone buzzed on the counter. I let it. I wrote today's date on the marker's cap like a timestamp and felt the decision settle in my bones. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was protecting tomorrow. I started with a system because systems don't lie. One box labeled bedroom, one labeled bathroom, one labeled desk. I folded her clothes with respectful hands, not tenderness exactly, but the kind of care you use to keep sharp edges from cutting later. I wrapped picture frames in towels, taped the corners tight, printed clean letters so there would be no confusion on a hard day. In the closet, hangers clicked like a metronome. The dog watched from the doorway, head on paws, as if he knew we were moving something you can't see. I set aside a manila envelope and began its contents the way you build a repair order. Dates, times, copies, confirmations. Not a threat, a record. When the first box filled, I set it by the door and pressed the tape seam flat with my palm. That sound, sticky and final, landed in my chest. I slid the envelope on top and stood there a beat longer than needed. Decisions have weight. Mine held. At 7:00 p.m., her text lit the room. Dinner with the girls. No where, no when, no who. I stared at it the way you stare at a check engine light that's finally named itself. I didn't answer. I turned the phone face down and went back to the work that pays for roofs and quiet. Dishes clean, floors swept, locks counted, lights set on timers. A voicemail rolled in, then another. I didn't play them. Men my age learn that not every noise deserves your ears. I took the boxes to the hallway, lined them up like a clean row of sockets, and felt the house lose its echo. On the fridge, the house rule sat square. On the counter, the envelope waited like a mirror. I tapped Do Not Disturb and watched the little moon icon appear. Peace isn't free. You buy it with decisions. The porch light clicked on by itself. If the night had plans, it could keep them. My plans were already in motion. At 10:00 the next morning, another message arrived. Traveling for a few days, back Monday. I'll explain later. Don't worry. The wording was careful, like a lawyer had edited hope. I read it twice and felt nothing break because nothing in me was undecided. I poured coffee, black, and let the steam fog the edge of that so-called explanation. Older adults know the difference between information and a stall tactic. This was a stall. I set the phone beside the envelope, the lock kit, the lined-up boxes with their honest labels. Coffee, lock, envelope. Systems, not speeches. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, then I pulled it back. Not yet. Timing matters. Torque the bolt too soon and you strip it. I zipped the last suitcase, checked the hinge on the front door, and heard the day get quiet the way a solved problem gets quiet. When the time came, I'd send one line that told the truth. For now, the house said everything I needed to say. I typed the line without pausing, like tightening a bolt you've measured twice. No problem, honey. Explain it to my attorney. One sentence that didn't ask for permission and didn't leave room for a story. Older folks know the power of a line in the sand. You don't raise your voice, you raise your standard. I watched the text send, the little blue bubble slide to the right, and felt the house get still in a good way, like a shop after the compressor shuts off. I set the phone beside the black coffee and checked the door hinges out of habit. Not to stall, just to keep my hands honest. That message wasn't a threat. It was a boundary written in plain English. If you've ever managed a crew or raised a teenager, you know the tone. Calm, final, no extra words to fight with later. I took one breath, counted to 5 the way my old man taught me, and waited for the noise that always comes when clarity shows up. The phone started singing like a fire alarm. Unknown. Emily. Unknown again. Then her sister, the one who never texts me unless someone wants cleanup. 10 calls in 2 minutes, then voicemails stacking like parking tickets. I let them ring. I've answered panic before and learned it only buys more panic. Men my age keep a different pace when it matters. We move steady, not fast, so nothing gets stripped. The screen lit the counter like a cheap neon sign while the fridge hummed, the house rule magnet held, and the envelope watched like a witness. Another call. Another. Somewhere in there, a text with a long paragraph formed, then another with just my name. I didn't open them. If the truth needs me now, it didn't need me then. The dog lifted his head, looked at me, and settled back down. Good dog. I sipped coffee and reminded myself, storms are loud on the roof but small at the breaker. I had already flipped the switch. Instead of answering, I finished what I started. Tape, press, smooth. Last seam on the last box. Bedroom, bathroom, desk, lined up like a clean socket set along the hall. You learn, after a certain age, that completion is its own kind of courage. I slid the marker back into the drawer, wiped the blade of the packing knife, and let the silence take attendance. The calls turned to voicemails, the voicemails to bubbles of text. Nothing in those messages could outvote the picture I'd already seen or the list I'd already made. So I did something useful, took out the trash, checked the porch light timer, set a clean towel by the sink for later. It's amazing how ordinary tasks anchor a wild hour. By the time I pressed the last strip of tape flat, the house had a different echo. Less clutter, more truth. The phone buzzed again. I rested my palm on the box nearest the door and felt it. The end of guessing. I placed the utilities-only envelope on top of the suitcase. Not hidden, not dramatic. Just where a person can't miss it when reality comes through the door. Inside, bank confirmations, dates, the new routine written in ink. Next to it, the spare keys that no longer fit. There's a kindness in leaving things labeled. It keeps the next conversation short. I stepped back and checked the lineup like a foreman before closing. Boxes square, boxes. Hinges tight. Deadbolt kit set aside where my hands will find it. The calendar on the wall said what calendars always say, keep moving. The phone buzzed with a longer ring, video call. I let it die like the rest. I'm not a prop in somebody else's performance. I'm a man with a plan and a receipt. If you've ever had to pack up a parent's house or settle an estate, you know the calm I mean. The way paper and order takes fear off the table. That envelope wasn't anger. It was mercy. I switched the ringer off and watched the little moon appear. Do not disturb. Then I took the last swallow of coffee and tasted the line between lives. There's a flavor to endings, burnt and clean at once, like a pan you finally scrubbed down to steel. The calls kept queuing, tiny red numbers climbing, but the room got quieter because I was done listening for chaos. I rinsed the cup, dried it, and set it upside down like a period at the end of a sentence. If you've ever walked out of a bad meeting and into fresh air, you know that first lungful. That was this. The house had a new sound. Not lonely, not triumphant. Ready. I checked the front door, felt the latch kiss the strike plate, and heard that tidy click older ears respect. One message had turned down the volume on a whole life. Whatever came next, it would meet me on my side of the door, where systems live and explanations don't. Monday at 11:08 a.m., the handle tried its old trick. Rattle, lift, push. The sound carried through the hallway like a memory that hadn't learned it was over. I stood a step back, let the deadbolt hold, and counted a steady 5 the way my father taught me before tough conversations. The porch light wasn't on, but the day was bright enough to see the shadow in the frosted glass. Keys scraped. A frustrated breath fogged the pain. Dogs no schedules. Mine lifted his head and waited. I set my palm on the door, not to soften it, just to feel the hinge tell me everything was seated right. Older folks will understand that calm. When you've done the work, the moment doesn't own you. I unlatched the chain, cracked the door 2 inches, and saw her face in the sliver, windblown, urgent, confident like the code hadn't changed. It had. "Jack," she said, already annoyed, "what's wrong with the lock?" The house and I answered together. Nothing. "Why won't my key work?" she asked, pushing the door with her questions. I kept my foot on the jamb and opened it just wide enough to be neighborly, not enough to invite a scene. "Different lock," I said. Plain words travel best. She blinked fast, that quick anger people wear when a plan hits a wall. "You changed it? Seriously?" Her voice dropped, as if keeping the tone low might turn the moment back into yesterday. Men my age know that tone. It's the one that asks for exceptions without saying the word. "Yes," I said. "Deadbolt's mine. Schedule's mine." She glanced past me into the house like it might help her case. Boxes lined up, surfaces clear, the quiet that follows a hard weekend of choosing. I didn't fill the silence. She tried again. "I just need to come in and talk." I shook my head once. "Not today." Her key hovered at the lock, useless as a promise. I stepped aside just enough to place the suitcase on the threshold. Hers, packed neat, wheels pointed toward daylight. On top of it, the fat manila envelope I'd built like a repair order. Dates, copies, confirmations, a clean summary of the truth. "These are yours," I said, voice level. No sting, no speech. She stared like the items might relabel themselves if she held her eyes just right. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, reaching for the handle, testing the door again. I didn't budge. "You can take the suitcase now," I added, "and the envelope." She lifted it with 2 fingers, as if heat might rise through the paper. Somewhere down the street, a mower droned, ordinary as June. The sound reminded me what this was. Not a disaster, not a storm, just a Monday with a decision standing in the doorway. "Jack, come on," she said, shifting to the softer voice. "We can sort this out." I nodded once. "We are." "You can't do this," she said, volume tightening, the way people talk when they want the neighborhood to side with them. I kept mine easy. "I am doing it." Older adults know the difference between a threat and a boundary. One tries to scare you, the other holds the line. She tried the history angle. 8 years, holidays, the couch we picked with a coupon. I let the memories pass like cars you don't plan to drive again. "Open the door, Jack," she said, lower now, bargaining with the air. "We'll talk." "We've talked," I answered. "We've texted. We've waited. This part is action." She glanced at the box labels in the hall. Bedroom, bathroom, desk. Proof that the decision didn't happen in a sentence but over a weekend of tape and ink. Her jaw set. "You're cruel." I shook my head. "No, I'm clear." Behind her, the porch step waited like the first rung on a ladder. She could climb it or not. My side was fixed. She put a hand on the envelope again, as if the paper might tell a different story. "What's even in here?" she asked, trying the door with questions now that keys had failed. I met her eyes. "The truth, and the instructions for leaving." She opened the flap with a sharp tear, the kind that says you'd rather fight the paper than the facts. The first page caught her breath. The copied messages, the dates, the bank changes. A photo edge flashed. She didn't pull it fully out, didn't have to. Older eyes know a picture's weight without seeing the whole frame. "Who sent—" she started. "Someone who remembered right and wrong," I said. She shut her mouth, read another line, and then stared at the suitcase like it might shrink if she waited. "There's a time listed," I added, gentle, "for you to come back with someone and pick up anything we missed. After that, I won't be here." The door clicked a clean inch closer toward closed. She slipped a finger under the flap and tore it open like the paper had done something to her. Pages slid forward, A photo edge escaped and fluttered to the floor between us, face down. She didn't pick it up. I did, not to wave it, just to set it on top where it belonged, truth face up. Older eyes know the weight of a picture before the brain catches up. She scanned the first page, dates, times, a copy of the bank confirmations, then the second, then stopped at the images. The porch got quiet in a way that isn't peace. It's the sound of a story running out of places to hide. She looked at the lighting, the angle, the hand on her hip that wasn't mine. No thunder, no speech, only her breathing getting shallower, like the window had drifted shut. "Who?" she started, but the name died in her throat. She wasn't asking for information. She was asking for a different universe. This one answered with paper. "It's not what it looks like," she managed, trying to pull the world back over itself like a sheet that suddenly felt too small. I shook my head once. "Don't insult both of us." The older you get, the less patience you have for sentences that rewrite physics. A hand on a hip is a hand on a hip. A lean is a lean. The space you keep with friends wasn't in those frames. She swallowed and reached for softer ground. "I needed space," she said, as if geography could take the stand for her choices. "You traveled," I said, keeping my voice even. "You didn't give a where or a when. You told me not to worry. I didn't. I planned." She glanced at the street like the pavement might offer an alibi. None came. In marriages, people try magic tricks, cover the coin, hide the card, but older audiences see the hands. She held the envelope tighter, as if pressure could press out a better truth. It didn't. "We can do counseling," she said quickly, the way people say sale when they've already broken the thing you came to buy. I've sat on those couches, heard the scripts, watched the clock. Some work when two people show up honest. Some don't when one person shows up with a story they won't retire. "You don't fix broken trust with a coupon," I said, steady. "You rebuild it with months of matching words and actions. That starts with telling the truth, without a clock, without a chaperone." She tried on contrition like a jacket that didn't quite fit, tugged at a sleeve and waited for me to agree we could put this on layaway. Older men know the difference between repair and repaint. One holds, one peels. "I'll stop," she said, almost saying what she wasn't ready to say out loud. "I'll cut." She bit it off. The sentence told on itself. The porch light flicked in the daytime, a timer out of sync, and answered for me. "No." "You're cold," she said, looking for a knob to turn me back into yesterday. I met her eyes. "I'm clear. Cold is when you don't care. Clear is when you care enough to stop pretending." In the shop, I torqued to spec because stripped threads cost more later. At home, it's the same. Set the value, don't over-tighten, don't underdo it. She tried volume, then softness, then volume again, the way a person wiggles a stuck key. I didn't wiggle. 8 years, Jack," she said, laying history on the porch like a throw rug. "We have a life." "We had one," I said. "It needed respect to keep running." She lifted the photo an inch and then let it drop, as if gravity might lighten by request. The dog shifted behind me and sighed, the sound of a house keeping time. "So that's it?" she asked. "That's it," I answered. Not cruel, not loud, just accurate. The truth doesn't echo, it lands. Wind came up the street and lifted a corner of the welcome mat, a small wave that rose and fell between our shoes. She pulled the suitcase handle, wheels thunking down the step like a gavel. The envelope rode against her side, stiff as a verdict. I didn't slam the door. I eased it toward the frame the way you ease a hood after a hard repair, careful, certain, aligned. The latch kissed the strike plate and clicked, clean and final, the sound older ears trust. No shouting from the porch, no last-minute monologue. Just the rhythm of a neighborhood Monday, somebody mowing, a delivery truck braking, a mailbox clapping shut. I stood there with my palm on the wood and let the quiet take attendance. Not grief, not relief. Something in between that grows when a room tells the truth. The dog leaned against my leg. I scratched his ear and turned the deadbolt once. The house answered back with the softest thing I'd heard in weeks. Done. I cleaned the garage the way you reset a life. One shelf, one bin, one honest decision at a time. The smell of old oil hung on while I swept out the grit that collects when you're busy surviving. I shifted the workbench to the spare room where her vanity used to sit, bolted it to the studs, and lined the sockets in order, smallest to largest, like a sentence that finally reads right. The pegboard took shape. Wrenches, pliers, a level that no longer lies. I coiled extension cords, tossed dead batteries, labeled drawers with a fat black marker. When you've paid enough mortgages and fixed enough engines, you learn that tidiness is cheaper than regret. I pulled a new shop light from the box, clicked it on, and listened to the ballast hum. The room looked different, useful, mine, ready. I rolled the chair in, tapped the bench with my knuckles, and felt something settle in my chest. Not joy, not victory, just steady. The wedding frame lived in the hallway for 8 years, collecting dust and holidays. I took it down without ceremony and set it face up on the dining table. We were younger there, her hair different, my tie crooked, two people smiling like the road had only one direction. Older eyes noticed the small things first, the way hands hold, the distance in inches that tells on hearts. I wrapped the frame in a towel, then another, and slid it into a box labeled miscellaneous, bottom corner, because I don't need to find it by accident. The tape gun sang its dry song as I sealed the flaps, one strip, then a second for the future I've finally admitted exists. No smashing, no fire, just storage. Some endings don't need theater, they need lids. I wrote the date across the top in block letters and stacked the box with the others along the wall. The room exhaled. I did too. Let the photo rest. Let the truth stand. Mike showed up like men do when they mean it. No plan, just a knock and a paper bag that smelled like deli mustard. "Brought lunch," he said, handing me half a sandwich the size of a glove. We ate standing by the counter like mechanics on a short break, chewing more than talking. Older friendships run on that kind of fuel. Calories, eye contact, and the right amount of silence. He didn't ask for a play-by-play. He glanced at the labeled boxes, then at me, and raised his chin a quarter inch. I nodded back. That was plenty. We talked shop, brake jobs, an old guy's Buick with a phantom rattle, whether a certain ball team will ever learn to bunt. Before he left, he set a hand on my shoulder, squeezed once, and said, "You good?" I answered the only way that fit. "I'm efficient." He grinned because he heard what I meant. "Call if you need hands," he said. "I've got two." He always has. Mrs. Ramirez knocked after supper with a Tupperware of cookies, and that specific brand of kindness neighbors carry like a talent. "Too many for us," she said, which is the polite way to say I saw your weekend. I invited her as far as the mat. She respected the line without being told. We traded small talk, weather, her grandson's science fair, the price of tomatoes like it's breaking news. I took one cookie and bit in, sugar, butter, and something I couldn't name that tasted like normal. She squeezed my forearm the way a mom does when she's not your mom. "You're a good man," she said, and I let the words land without arguing with them. When she left, she waved at the dog like he was on her route. The house felt softer by 1 degree. I poured milk like I was 10 again and ate another cookie on the porch steps. Street quiet, sky wide, lights warm. Some mercies come in plastic lids. Later, Rachel texted, "She says you're cruel." I read it twice, the way you read a warning label before you lift. Cruelty is easy. It swings wild and wants an audience. What I chose was different. I typed back, "I'm quiet." Then I added what mattered. Quiet isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Older adults know that difference. How silence can be a boundary, a prayer, a way to stop feeding a fire that only burns you. Rachel replied with a simple, "Okay," the kind that means she won't push me into a speech I don't owe anyone. I set the phone down and listened to the house keep honest time, the fridge hum, the dog's nails on hardwood, a neighbor's screen door clap shut. I turned off the kitchen light and watched the porch lamp kick on by timer, right on schedule. That felt like a promise I could keep. Lights when they should be on, locks when they should be locked, a man steady in his own life. The weeks after looked like a life that finally fit. I set my alarm before dawn and met the road while the sprinklers still talked to the grass. Older knees complain, but they also forgive once you warm them. The air was clean in that way only morning earns. Back at the shop, Mike and I nursed an old motorcycle to health. carb cleaned, valves checked, a stubborn bolt coaxed with heat. There's a rhythm to shared work that men my age trust. Pass the socket, hold the light, nod when the idle smooths out. We sold it for a fair price and split the cash with grins that didn't need speeches. In the afternoons, I tackled the small stuff people put off, fixing the gate latch, replacing a hose, tuning the mower so it starts first pull. Each completed task put a little weight back in my spine. The climax wasn't fireworks. It was a Tuesday at noon when I realized my days were mine again. Evenings learned how to be quiet without being lonely. I'd sit on the porch with a paperback and a glass of water, sweating a ring onto the rail. The neighborhood made its usual music, kids calling across yards, a screen door slapping, someone pretending they didn't burn dinner. Older eyes find comfort in ordinary light, the way the sky keeps its promise to fade and return. I'd read a chapter, look up, and see the house as it really was. Clean lines, honest corners, no furniture waiting for an apology. I wasn't counting keys anymore. I was counting pages. Sometimes I'd fix a loose board or oil the hinge that groaned when weather changed. Every small repair felt like interest paid back on a loan I didn't know I took. The climax was simple and loud in its own way. The porch lamp clicked on by timer, right on schedule, and I felt the click inside me too. Steady, set, aligned. Rachel stopped by now and then with coffee from a place across town that skips the slogans. She'd sit on the top step like a neighbor, talk about her nephew's hitting slump, or a stray cat that chose her balcony like it paid rent. We kept it simple. No autopsy of the past, no audition for the future. Just two people who tell the truth at a human pace. One evening she asked it soft, "Do you regret it?" I didn't stall. "Only the time," I said, "not the decision." Older adults will understand. Regret belongs to the months you trained yourself to ignore the obvious, not to the moment you finally acted. She nodded like someone hearing a diagnosis that fits. We watched a bike roll by with a kid standing on the pegs, hands in the air like balance isn't earned. The climax lived in that silence, coffee warm, air easy, and my answer standing up all by itself. I stood at my own door and watched the new deadbolt shine in the afternoon light. It wasn't victory, it was alignment. A clean click that said the house and I finally agreed. Respect, I've learned, isn't a speech you rehearse. It's a system you live. Coffee, lock, envelope, schedule, sleep. When you've seen the pictures, you don't wait for a better story. You stop funding the mystery, and you start funding your peace. I won't pretend it didn't sting. It did. But pain isn't proof you were wrong. It's proof you waited too long. I'm not the hero. I'm the man who stood where he said he would. The porch lamp clicks on by timer now, and so do I. Clear over kind. If you've ever chosen clarity over chaos, say so. Type "clear" in the comments, and tell me the one boundary that saved your life. The door is set. The future's on this side. Let's step into it.